Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to start an introduction for this video for this Rakdos Haste deck that I've been working on for quite a while. No 5-0 yet, but I've had 4, 5, 4 1s. And the following video is a 4-1 facing 2 Dimir Frogtide, Dimir Frog, and 2 Boros Energy lists. And we go 3-1 in those matches. So, and so I want to just show out some of the neat combos that you can do with this list. Obviously, we know Tarfire and trying to get the double thing out. Well, my little flavor is Oliphant. Oliphant and Detective Phoenix have been insane together, in my opinion. The reason is, not only does it let you run a lot less land here, it also gives you access to making sure that if anybody does a well, Blood Moon doesn't really affect you because you need mountains, but the Harbinger, the one that makes them all islands, which I kept getting screwed by in Dimir Frogtide, since I've added the Oliphants, I haven't lost 2 once due to that reason. And so it also allows you to give a 1-card creature that's big enough to collect 6 evidence with for the Phoenix without completely wrecking your entire graveyard. So I really enjoyed that combo, as well as Oliphant with some of our new Duskmourn tech. Here is the Overlord and the Fear of Missing Out. The Overlord says he's double black, 3 colorless, enchantment, creature, avatar, horror. He's got Impending 5, which is 1 black, 1 colorless. Whenever he attacks or enters, mill 4 cards, then you may return a non-avatar creature card or planeswalker from your graveyard to your hand. So an impending states is you can play him from his pending cost, and he gets an impending counter on him, and you remove an impending counter every end step, every one of your end steps. And once he has no impending counters, he becomes a creature because he's just an enchantment while he has an impending counter on him. So he enters, you get to basically look for a creature and bring it back. What's really nice, what I've been able to do, especially in this, is I go turn 2 Overlord into Oliphant. So then turn 3, I'm making sure, even though I only started with 1 land, making sure I get my 3rd land drop. And I'm able to repeat that and then use the Oliphant later for not only Phoenix, but later on if I get too much land, I could haste in an Oliphant. Didn't get a chance to do that in this league, but you could haste in the Oliphant with your Arena of Glories here. So that's a really cool thing, and it gives double creatures trample, 2 creatures trample because it does, and then it'll give another one. So that's a really cool, interesting little caveat within the deck. And one thing that's being slept on right now that I really like is Kroxa. He's not the best against the ring, so that there are, those matches where he's maybe not the best, but he's not bad. Because making the opponent discard cards when you're already so far ahead and hasting in, even if somebody kills him when you haste him in, make them discard 2 cards, even if it's land, ring, whatever, that's huge, and that gets me in the lead, especially when Overlord has already entered, and that replaces itself with another creature and provides me a creature on board. Then you got your normal Nethergoyfs, your dig lands. I'm kind of thinking about maybe switching these out from dig lands and going to actual lands in the next leagues and things like that, just because having access to more land is just huge, obviously. So that's definitely something on the radar to think about, because I think I get enough land in the graveyard anyways. Stay tuned. Watch the rest of the league. Let me know what you think. Love to hear your comments. Please like, subscribe, and let me know how I can improve your day. Thank you. And we're only 1 turn away from the Overlord coming back. We hit the Surgical off of the Bauble for the Flage, which is such a huge hit here. That completely changed the whole aspect of this game. It was a pretty awesome top deck there. He still does the ring through my Bowmasters, but here's where he starts to try to come back. He plays, the Guide of Souls into the Pride and gets Grave Hate. And he's going to gain a bunch of life, with the tokens that he makes from Ocelot Pride. So, and we know that he's got a Charm in hand. I kept the Oliphant in my hand. The reason being, I thought that maybe if I top decked a land, I could haste it in. At least that's what my hope was. Here, I still didn't want to get rid of the Oliphant. I still thought it was just a little too good. He didn't want to obviously tap his ring because then I just start popping his creatures. So he does just give the energy to the Ocelot Pride, and hopefully, you know, he was hoping that can save him. He does end up gaining a lot of life, and what I love about this deck is we can get damage, crazy amounts of damage out of nowhere. Like right here, swinging for 7 in the air. Okay, he has Graveyard Hate, but we're able to still you know, get some more cards. Unluckily, we don't hit a creature there with that, but still, it's not the worst thing in the world to not hit a creature there. It does suck, but is what it is. He does end up top decking Bolt in order to kill our Bowmaster so he can draw some cards. He hastes in a Rajavant, but doesn't end up swinging with it, which is a pretty interesting thing, which I do like that so he can keep getting life, you know, by bringing it back in every turn since he knows I'm not going to counter it. He does end up putting all the counters on Ocelot Pride, just trying to gain as much life as he could. We don't want to go down to that low of life, plus we want Phoenix in the graveyard. Now that I don't see any Graveyard Hate, he could have it still, but I don't actually physically see it at this point. So, but he's gained quite a bit of life this game, and we're still massively in this game, which usually for aggro decks you're not able to do, which I find that really interesting. And we're able to bring out Phoenix onto our giant Orc Army token, swing. We hit a Bowmasters, bring Bowmasters back, knock him down to 1 life, which he had 4 counters on the ring anyways, and then we Bowmaster him down for the final 1-2-2-0. Now we're on to Dimir Frogtide, which I've been seeing this everywhere, both with and without Oculus. So right here, knowing that he's got a lot of fatal pushes, my goal is to try and haste out Channeler on turn 2. So I turn 1, go get the Blood Crypt into Oliphant, getting a regular mountain, because I do want to make sure I have a regular mountain, because they do play the guy that makes everything islands in your deck. But turn 2, play Channeler, bestow a Phoenix on him from the Oliphant is just so nasty. And you got a 3/3 swinging Channeler, and I got 3 card types in my graveyard, making him a 5/5 next turn. It's just so good. Right there, and now I can Croxa, make him discard a card. He ends up actually discarding a counter spell, which is perfect, so that means my stuff can, you know, try to live. And then we just pull out a simple Nethergoyf and seeing what he can do here to try to combat this. He does bring out a Frog, and we do get a Bowmasters, which is perfect to go along with the Frog. Here's where it's a little interesting. I could have tried to bolt the Frog because he was down to 1 or 2 cards at this point here. I ended up not doing it since I saw another Nethergoyf on the top. I ended up just hitting his life, but that definitely could have been played slightly different, for sure, 100%. And since he only had 1 card left, I wanted to make sure that he didn't have Counterspell as his last card, so I just play the Bowmasters now. One of his cards, whether he top decked or not, was Murktide. Here it gets a little weird. I have to swing with the Channeler, you know, with the card types in the graveyard. But I was just like, well, let's just get but it did allow me to get Crocs out from the graveyard, making him discard some stuff. And we got a pretty powerful board here with what he has. So he's top decking now, and I have another Nethergoyf, and I have blockers on the field with the second Bowmasters coming up. Pretty nasty. I could have tried to swing away, but I decided not to. I wanted to hold off just a little bit longer. Here I didn't want to take a ton of damage, so, and Phoenix, you know, depending if I draw Oliphant on a few other cards, I can just, you know, re-bestow Phoenix. Playing the Bowmasters comes in. So I put in 4 pushes and 2 surgicals, and I take out 4 lightning bolts. The reason bolts come out in there is because bolts are just not that good against, you know, frog. And it can kill frogs sometimes, but I mean, they can just grow it out of where we need it to go. So one other thing I do want to test is maybe Flare of Malice, which would be pretty interesting with Croxa. If you play Croxa, then you flare the Croxa before you sacrifice it, and it kills Murktide and other big creatures. So that's something I definitely want to test in the future. Here we're able to, I almost played the second Channeler, but I felt as though he had a Bowmasters. He didn't end up having Bowmasters. He had a push, which is fairly close. But I I still wanted to be able to play around. It was kind of cool to hold up Channeler with a Tarfire and to be able to get it out of Bowmaster range. At this point, you kind of have to try to get the Overlord out. Just get some bodies out there. You know what I mean? And Bowmaster's just so good to or so hard for him to have to deal with. And you bring out a 3/3 Channeler, which I'm surprised he didn't have a counterspell. He did have a kill spell, but I'm surprised he didn't have a counterspell for one of those two, because those are both pretty rough for him. And here's where Fatal Push is kind of a little weaker. We can't kill Murktide with it, and so that's kind of what I was thinking about with Flare, and Flare would also take care of Flage too, which is kind of two of our biggest problems is Murktide and Flage. Playing against these decks, and in this league I play against 2 Boros Energies and 2 Murktides, so well, Frogtides I call them, and so Flare might have been pretty interesting had I've used that. So that requires some further testing for sure. Here I didn't want to dig because I would have had to have paid 3 in order to dig, because I knew I didn't have any other mountains left, and Wooded Foothills couldn't grab the swamp that is obviously needed. But we are able to block the Murktide with the Phoenix, which is nice, and that reoccurring Phoenix is just so nasty. The fear of missing out. I think it was a slight misplay here. I think I should have Overlorded first and then into Fear. Not sure if it would have changed anything. Maybe. But you guys let me know down in the comments if you think that would have changed any of the aspect of the game here. We had to get back Channeler with the Overlord just to block the Murktide, because it was obviously just going to be too big for us to try to deal with. And then they played another Murktide. It was that was kind of the nail in the coffin on that one. So we're on to game 2. No other changes. We kind of kept it the way it was. I still didn't see any Oculuses, and if you don't see any Oculus, Surgical's not that great against these guys. It's alright if you kill a frog and then you Surgical off their frog, but that just kind of seems very dependent on hoping that happens type of thing. Here we had a lot of land, so I wanted to play Fear just to try to get out some of the land out of my hand. It was an interesting choice on which one of the 3, because I'm like, I do like Blood Crypt. I will need that later, and obviously I didn't know I was going to top deck a Blood Crypt. But the Takenuma actually ends up not discarding the Takenuma was actually a pretty big play later on that you'll see. He Toxic Deluges there, which is honestly not that big a deal for us. But here we're able to end of turn Takenuma, and it's pretty hard to counter that, because you're not really going to bring in Cosine to Memory against me, or against this deck really. I would be surprised if you did. Here I thought that he would have a counter spell, but I felt as though it was better to get the counter spell out and have him force it, than him not to have, just try to get that out of his hand, because he's going to need to get out of his hand anyways. And impending 5 at this point, that's just going to be 5 longer turns. I didn't know if I could make it that long. He does play a Murktide, but it's not that big a deal. The cool thing is we do have Croxa, and we got Channeler now. We're able to haste in our boys. And I do see that the Arena of Glory is coming in, and so I don't haste out the Croxa because I know the Arena of Glory was coming, but then I didn't think about the fact that we were going to mill over it anyways with the Overlord. And we'll gladly take that trade with the Overlord and the Murktide any day of the week. I mean, Overlord, if it's come in and got me a creature, it's already replaced itself, and his Murktide stole all of his cards out of his graveyard, and we won. So, and then we're back to back again against another Dimir Frogtide, which a lot of people seem to be playing. Like, I guess that has a decent matchup against Boros Energy. You guys got to let me know. Blue and black are just not my forte. I prefer hasty / aggro-y decks, and so that's why I've been really exploring with this deck, and the Oliphants I think are huge to go along with the Phoenixes, at least in my opinion. We're able to get a hit there with the Channeler, but we top deck another Bowmasters to kill his Bowmasters, and Bowmasters is just so good in this matchup. It's just, it stops his frog and stops all of his preordains and all that type of shit. So it's really good of us to be able to get that in. I swing here because I'm thinking, oh, maybe he's got another Bowmasters hit my Bowmasters, and I would just Bowmasters again, and we would just, it would end up being with me, leaving me with a Bowmasters and no tokens, and he would be out of his Bowmasters, is my thoughts there. But he ended up not having a second Bowmasters. He does have a frog, though, and so we're able to end of turn play our second Bowmasters. He had 4 cards in hand, so I didn't want to like bolt it or anything like that. My thoughts were here is why not just get our Bowmasters bigger? And if he wanted to give it flying and discard his hand, I had the bolt anyways. So with me having the bolt, I felt as though I'm A-okay with trading my Bowmasters and a bolt for his frog. And so that's why I put that on there. I ended up putting in another, flinging out my other Bowmasters that counters it, and then he fatal pushes this Bowmasters, which still gives me the Phoenix, which is very smart on his part because that didn't allow me to block with Phoenix. And at this point, I feel as though it's just time for aggro. That we just need to get as much damage in as we possibly can. And maybe dropping the Tarfire into the grave, maybe that wasn't the right decision. Maybe it was. It's definitely up in the air. It gave me 4 card types, I believe. So I'm assuming it still probably was the best option, even though he was down to 4. So now we're on to game 3. And since we didn't see any Oculuses, we only put in 4 pushes out for those 4 bolts and no surgicals for this match. So, we didn't do the typical bobble into Channeler, which is still one of the best things in Modern and has been for the last couple years. And people are still sleeping on that because of all the MH3 stuff. So don't sleep on the bobble Channeler. There's still many things that it's hard to deal with, for sure. Plays Bowmasters. Nothing really we can do about Bowmaster there. It's at this point, I feel as though it's best just to get this out. I'm not too worried about the 2 damage the Bowmaster is going to cause me. I don't do a ton of drawing except for with Fear. So I felt as though it didn't really matter too much when it came to that. And with the Oliphant, we had to back up to be able to get a second mountain. Luckily, we top decked what we needed anyways. So now we can hold up Push and Tarfire for anything that we may need to kill. And we're that much closer to getting Overlord back out onto the field. He does push, but we can Tarfire. I want to make sure. Oh, I guess Bobble does. I forgot about Bobble does hurt us with Bowmasters. Didn't want to waste the push here on just a 1/1 token. Felt as though we could get around that and not be too scared of it. Top deck the Theater, which the Theater was pretty interesting. I definitely I like the idea of we play Croxa here, force him to discard. Still holding up the push in case he drops a frog. Murktide's still going to be a little bit of an issue, at this point, but we're well protected against frog for sure. And we can just bring out the Croxa. He ends up countering it. He ends up snaring it here, and I had to double check on what I wanted to get rid of and what I didn't, and that's one thing piloting this deck that you got to really learn is what cards you can get rid of in your graveyard effectively with the escape cost and what cards you can't. Luckily, our Overlord's going to come out in a couple turns anyways. That Hearse was... I thought that Hearse might be the end of me, but we're able to play through Hearse here, which is super nice. Didn't really have an Oliphant or any way to... without getting rid of a lot on that Phoenix. So he does counterspell it. And now we don't have anything to be able to... enough cards to be able to get it out there. But with the Overlord coming out, I want to keep calling it Overseer from my Fallout. I don't know why. I might just call it Overseer from here on out, just because that's what I like to call it. But it is Overlord, technically. I do get the push to go on the frog, but he does have counterspell. as his last card. So now all I know I need to be worried about is that hearse. Top decking the Bowmasters was perfect. I didn't want to hold it. I wanted him to force the the frog block here, and I'm able to just double. I'm not sure I agree with his decision. I think the hearse should have probably have prevented me from getting all my card types. I believe he had a chance to. I'd have to go relook a little closer and seeing what he could have exiled, but giving me the double attack allowed me to just win that game. And so now we're going on to the match for Boros Energy, our second match against this. We end up losing this match in game 3 on I believe it was game 3, on a very, very close one. He did win the draw, and he did play Rajvan on the first one, and obviously you can't let Rajvan hit you, so we don't want to risk it with Channeler. He misses his land drop, and so missing that land drop was huge, and me holding up Oliphant, I was just gonna we're gonna kill it now, use the swamp mana to use the Oliphant, get another mountain, then we can play Channeler or double Channeler next turn. I figured that he at least had one kill spell in his hand. He had to have a pretty decent hand if he kept a one-lander. You know what I mean? And we need to see what's coming up next on ours anyways. Do like seeing the Nethergoyf. Assumedly he doesn't have Graveyard Hate in the main board. Just wanted to swing for 5 here. And holding up the bolt is pretty nice too. He does end up just passing his turn, and I top deck another Nethergoyf. I just swing for 5, not sure what he can do, and so I just play both Nethergoyfs and just pass the turn. He ends up conceding here, and so then we go on to game 2. That land drop hurt him a lot. So we're going to bring in 3 Surgicals, 3 Pyros, and 4 pushes. Out 4 Overlord, 3 Fear, and 3 Kroxa. The Kroxa just makes you... With Ring, he can load up his hand. The Fear, if you hear it your graveyard, Fear's not that great to go along with, so I figured those are my best options. And Overlord is just very slow in this matchup. And if we're getting to round 5, round 6, he's going to outring me and win the game, so it's just not our best option in this. Luckily, we kept a one-lander and we're able to make Surveil it on top. And I do Pyroclasm into Surgical, making sure it doesn't have any Ajani's. Unfortunately, we've got no Ajani's in hand, which sucks, because that would have been great if you had 1 or 2 Ajani's in hand. Not really sure his thinking here on not hasting in his Rajvan and just trying to hit me for a hit, knowing that he's got like a Static Prison and a Thraben Charm. I don't know. I massively disagree with his decision there. I would have hasted in the monkey and seen what I hit. What I was mainly worried about here in this match was hitting One Ring, or him hitting the One Ring, and he does end up hitting One Ring here in a bit, and that's what kind of takes control of the game, because I was definitely in control here for a good chunk of the match. The Thraben Charm does help him out. The double amped Raptor, not a big deal, since we're going to fly over anyways. I wanted to see what my top deck was. I figured I did need a land. Didn't want to spend too much mana on anything, and I wanted to be able to get as much damage through now. Knowing his last card is Jegantha. We did have him right where we wanted him for sure. With that last card just being that. Well, his last couple cards, sorry. I guess he had a few cards in hand, but we knew one was Jegantha for sure. We do bring out our 0-1 Nethergoyf at this point. The only thing we're really scared of on everything is the One Ring, because we are just in such a lead right now. I didn't want to swing here. I could have tried to force it. I felt as though as long as he doesn't top deck a ring, I'm good. And so he does get Prison to get rid of my Bowmasters, and he hits a Relic. but doesn't swing with Giganta, which is obvious, which, you know, I don't think anybody would have either. I bring in Phoenix since I don't have anything in my graveyard, just knock him down to 6. And on this turn, he either top decked the ring with the relic, or he top decked it this turn. But this completely changes the whole game around. And hashtag ban the One Ring. That comes from me, who qualified for the RCQ, the RC coming up next year with the One Ring. And I say ban it because it's just too good. Yeah, it's just way too good. So we do get a fear, and we're almost able to come back, but it's just that One Ring, and getting rid of the Bowmasters was just so nasty and so devastating for us that we just couldn't restabilize. I was wondering why he was swinging here. I figured he just had a bunch of creatures, but he just had a backup ring, and he could just start, chaining rings, kill my creatures one by one. No big thing. And that was a really smart move by him because he's able to, play the discharge, get some energy alive for his prisons, and kill my other stuff, and still have energy for prisons. And he was down to such low life until, and then he hits the Guide of Souls into the Ocelot Pride, and then that's when the wave starts. The wave starts back in his favor for sure. Nothing I could really do at this point, and my top decks at this point were just pretty bad. Our best one would have been Overlord, but we let him out because that's when we get into these matchups, the Ring's going to beat our Overlord for sure. So we're on to game 3. The issue, what happened with this game 3 is I had a decent hand, but I just kept drawing kill spells and not enough threats. So I kept a second Pyroclasm because I was like, oh, sweet, another Pyroclasm. And I only drew one Nethergoyf, and I didn't have enough card types in my graveyard to bring it back and to reanimate it and to keep it trucking. Him hitting this Flage, this was a pretty cool move too, though. He Flages my Nethergoyf. In response, I play Tarfire on the Amped Raptor, growing my Nethergoyf to a 3/4. I felt as though that was a pretty cool move, being able to do that. And I was like, okay, sweet. So we're getting some more damage. Maybe this will help us win help us win it and all that good stuff. Didn't want to bolt that for sure. Maybe bolting it might have been smart, and saving the Pyroclasm, because I end up Pyroclasming, which grows my Nethergoyf to a 4/5. But he's also within range on a discharge, which he does end up discharging the Nethergoyf. And that ends up being one of the last threats we see the rest of this match. And our opponent just starts getting out too many for us to deal with. And maybe holding Pyroclasm a turn might have been a smarter move. I was just worried about him drawing another kill spell to make the cat get bigger. Transfer into the Planeswalker, not get bigger, sorry. It's Raven Charm. Yeah, that was fine. I would have been able to Nethergoyf right there. That was my hope with that one. So I do Pyroclasm, getting rid of that. Then we just draw a Tarfire, which is 8 damage. It's pretty nice, but then once they hit Flage, it just gains them too much life for me to come back, or at least try to burn them. And that's why Burn's out of the meta right now. Flage single-handedly ruined Burn. I guess you could also say Ocelot Pride and Guide of Souls too. Drawing the third Pyroclasm. I think going forward, I'm probably only going to run 2 Pyroclasms in my sideboard as opposed to 3. I don't think you ever really want to see 3. I could be wrong. Let me know if you think differently. Down in the comments. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this deck, because I think there's a lot of analysis that could be happened with this deck, especially aggro wise. This was kind of a cool move. We're able to Pyroclasm and then bolt the Giganta, and I'm like, okay, we're starting to come back. But the problem is I needed to see Surgical Extraction to get rid of the Flage. The Flage is just absolutely killer. He then puts a Flage in the graveyard with his land, and then is able to escape Flage. I was making sure I put the Surgicals in right there by pulling up my sideboard, and that was not good. Top decking a Fatal Push, though, was pretty nice. because I'm able to, he hits me for it, and then we bring in Bowmasters. My thought was, hey, we block the Flage and do that. But he does fire, or whatever, fire, but then we're able to still Fatal Push, which is awesome. But then he can play out one ring after that, and it's just, he's at 25 life. I have no way to gain any extra card advantage. And so maybe some analysis needs to be had on the because the Overlord does bring cards back. So maybe not dumping all 4 of them, maybe going like a 2-and-2 split of Overlord and Fear. I think that might be a pretty good option going forward against Energy. Plus, if we're only having 2 Pyroclasms, that could help too. So that's where my head is at against Energy. I mean, I can't be that mad. We won one match, barely lost a second match in a league where we had 2 Dimir Frogtides and 2 Energies. Going 3-1 against them is pretty cool. Then we come up against our new challenger in the modern meta. Let me know what you guys think of Blue Belcher. I actually love the idea of Blue Belcher. I'm not a blue player, so I don't want to like sit back on my heels and play that way, but I love Belcher. I actually have one legacy deck, and that legacy deck is Goblin Char Belcher. I don't even know if it's any good anymore, but I've had it for about 10 years and kind of just slightly edited it here and there. This was an interesting move. So he counter spells it, but I wanted to make sure I kept Nethergoyf. So we're able to swing for, 3 there, which is pretty nice. Holding up the double bolt, he paid 3, and he's like, oh, I got him with that. But I intentionally kept up the mountain so he didn't see it. Drawing the Tarfire was just nasty. It was just over. We don't really have any sideboard stuff for Belcher. So it's just all out, I'm going to beat you to the punch, or you're going to beat me to the punch, one of the two. And I figure Kroxa would be pretty good in this matchup, because forcing him to discard the shit that he doesn't need, or I mean the shit that he needs, would be pretty sweet. We see an Oliphant up top, knowing that, so now we know we're not going to miss our land drop. I do love, playing against the guy that makes things all mountains, having Oliphants in the deck, because then I never really get screwed off of mountains. Here I wanted to make sure I can get the Nethergoyf out. Even though it's the Shoal. The blue Shoal. Who would have thought the blue Shoal would see... Who would have thought any of the Shoals would see play? But recently, we've been seeing more. I think obviously the red Shoal's banned. So, I mean, there's seriously some interesting things that go along with that for sure. My hope was I top deck a land, haste out a Kroxa next turn, and be able to hope he doesn't have a Belcher, but here he does pay the life, pull out a Belcher, so I know I have to kill him here. Unfortunately, I draw the wrong land, but even then, I'm not sure I would have won even with that. So we're on to game 3, and this game 3 is quick and it's nasty, and this really highlights what the deck can do very quickly before your opponent can even really get set up, and that's the type of decks I like to play, and that type of decks I like to figure out. So I haste in a Channeler into Tarfire. The Tarfire hits a Bauble on top, making them so big. So big. So a 3/3 and a 4/5, swinging for 7 turn 2. And he's got to pay 3 life to get the Fahali out. Fahali Archaeologist, or Fahali, however you want to say that card. I think the Fear is definitely the best card here. So we play Fear, discarding the Phoenix, top decking another Fear, not an issue whatsoever. Swing some more. He's got to block the Nethergoyf. He's down to 5. He can try to get something going here, but it's going to be very hard for him to win at this point. And that's what sweeps up our 4-1. Show you our prizes here so we can show you. But I appreciate y'all for watching. Like and subscribe. Comment down below. And y'all have a great rest of your day.